Good morning all, and thanks to Reed Corporate and to Grady. I'm going to talk to you about the Essential Metals story. We're going to be a Generation 3 lithium producer in a couple of years' time off the back of our Dome North lithium resource. I haven't got too many slides in here about lithium fundamentals. I think we're all across that. Suffice to say, it's pretty bullish. The only thing I'm concerned about is the inverse relationship that's appeared in the last 4 years between the spodumene price and the performance of the Richmond Football Club, who I follow. So fingers crossed for next year for both. So Essential Metals is really fortunate. We've got one of the 14 lithium resources in Australia. There are only 14. I'm not a geologist, but geologists tell me that lithium is really hard to find, and I certainly am witness to that. And there are two reasons. It's the geoscience. The tools that we use aren't as effective for lithium, particularly if it's undercover, versus gold or base metals. And number two is land access. So there's some pretty good prospective areas held by iron ore miners or gold miners, and they're not looking for lithium. So having a resource is a massive advantage. Where it's a fantastic location to develop a mine. We're in the Eastern Goldfields, so part of the Yilgarn Craton, and we're surrounded by other lithium deposits, so the geology is the right geology, and we're very close to really good infrastructure, and I'll talk to a bit more about that as I go through. And we're also funded for what we need to do for the next 12 months, so we're not looking to go to raise money anytime soon. Well, of course we will. We'll do it at the right time on the back of the right catalysts. And we think our timing's right. We're pushing forward with a scoping study at the moment. Next year will be detailed studies, and we'd like to be in a position to make a decision to mine in early 2024 and production sort of second half of 25. It's a very experienced board and management. We're gearing up the team. We need to. We'll be announcing something in a few weeks' time about an executive joining us who's very experienced in lithium. But we'll build the team out as we move forward. We've got a really good core. Our board's very experienced in mine development, covering metallurgy operations, corporate. So the right team to take it forward, and of course we'll supplement that as we move. We're capped at a market value of just over $100 million at the moment, so we've come down from probably what, 140. There's a bit of selling going on at the moment. We've got listed options that are expiring, or expired yesterday in fact. So there's been a bit of a turnover there where those options were well in the money, and there's been a bit of selling on the back of that. That should work its way through the system over the next week or two. So where are we? Well, we're about 130 kilometres south of Kalgoorlie. So as we all know, Kalgoorlie is the mining heart of WA. It's a source of people, parts, services, all within an hour and a half drive. So when you're talking about developing a project, where we are is a perfect location. And the key thing is we've got a lithium resource. We've got 11.2 million tonnes at 1.21%. It's spread across three mineralised deposits that make up the Dome North lithium resource. In terms of location, again, perfect for a development. We're right next to the main highway that runs from Kalgoorlie down to the seaport of Esperance. So Mount Marion and Mount Catlin are two lithium mines that export their spodumene concentrate out through Esperance Port. So they're well versed in handling lithium concentrate. And along that highway is a railway, a gas pipeline, a water pipeline, and in fact there's access to grid power about 20 kilometres further north to us, and we're in discussions with that supplier to see if we can get grid power. And the benefit there is, of course, that once you're on the grid, reliability, lower price power generation, but also access to green power, as you can buy it through the unallocated system. So it's a really good location to develop a project. So as I mentioned at the start, we have a lithium resource, and importantly too, of the 14 lithium resources in Australia, there are only 2 that are not yet subject to an offtake. And that puts us in a really strong commercial negotiating position. And we've started a process to find the right project partner so that in return for offtake, they must provide some funding. And I'll talk a little bit more about that But importantly, when you drill or you're looking for lithium and you find lithium, you need to know that it's recoverable. So we've already conducted metallurgical test work that's de-risked our ore bodies, which outcrop to surface, which is important from a mine development point of view. But it's also shown that we have fresh mineralisation at surface, and we've now completed metallurgical test work from surface all the way through the ore bodies. So we've de-risked them from that point of view. That just gives you a visual on the two main deposits, Cade and Davey, and you can see they're quite tabular, quite straight, both in strike and down dip. And again, from a mining perspective, that means that they're eminently mineable. Once you start mining, you're into ore straight away, and you're feeding your plant. So there's not a lot of working capital tied up in the mine development. Cade at the moment, you can see, is the larger deposit. It's 8.2 million tonnes with 5.4 million tonnes in the higher confidence indicated category. Davey is all inferred because it hasn't had any, or hadn't at this point in time, had any metallurgical test work completed. During this year, we've focused on improving the quality and the confidence of this resource. So we've infill drilled and conducted metallurgical test work, and importantly, we've drilled the top 50 metres to make sure that there's lithium present and recoverable, and pleasingly, the results show that there is. We're conducting, we've completed all that drilling and test work, and we'll be producing a mineral resource update in the next week or so, so you'll get to see that shortly. And the aim of that is it won't probably grow the global tonnes from 11.2 million tonnes, it won't materially change, but importantly we'll move more inferred across into indicated, and that'll form the backbone of the scoping study that we're currently undertaking. This slide just demonstrates to you the grades and the thicknesses that we have to surface. So you can see there, 23.7 metres, 1.26%. That's as good as you'll get, and that's at surface. So it gives us the confidence to know that we've got a robust operation from when we start. And we're getting Dome North development ready. So by that, we're taking steps. We've completed a baseline flora and fauna study. There are no red flags there. Of course, there's more detailed studies to go as we move through our detailed feasibility studies. We've completed a hydrology study, so we know there's plenty of available water sources for us. We've applied for a mining lease, and we should get that granted by the end of March, if not sooner. And importantly, we've got a really good relationship with the Naju people, the native custodians of the project land. And we, in fact, back in 2018, we developed a very small mine on one of the pegmatites about 20 kilometres from the Dome North resource on the same project, called the Sinclair Cesium mine. So the Sinclair pegmatite was an enriched lithium cesium pegmatite, a very rare one in fact. There are only two other pegmatites that exist in the world where cesium could be mined in commercial quantities, and we successfully executed that. So we went through all the mining approvals, and we also negotiated a heritage agreement and a mining agreement with the Naju people for that project. But we encompassed the whole Pioneer Dome project area. So all 450 square kilometres is already covered by a heritage agreement and a mining lease, and that obviously includes the Dome North lithium resource. So again, it's another great head start for us. Excuse me. And in terms of the how we get this thing through, so as a small company with 100 mil market cap, we've obviously got to improve that, and there's some key catalysts coming through that will do that, I think. It's a resource update coming out in the next week or so. Scoping study will be due in January. And we've also started a process where we've sought expressions of interest for lithium offtake and or concentrate, lithium spodumene concentrate. And as part of that, we're saying to those parties that are interested, and there are many parties from North Asia, so China, Korea, Japan and Europe, and we're saying to them, you can get the majority of offtake, but in return you must help us fund this project. And the goal is to make sure that the majority of the funding comes through as some sort of debt project facility, repayable over a reasonable term, and then we'll find the balance, and we'll do that through a number of ways. Obviously the equity markets will help us fill that gap. We may divest a minority interest, say 10% of the project, to the off-taker, which will assist the off-taker potentially in helping with the debt funding. And of course, we'll look at options to bring forward cash flow. So quite often people say to me, why don't you just DSO the whole lot, direct ship or dig it out and ship it? Well, of course, we'll look at doing that, but as part of our detailed studies, because obviously if you're building a plant, the idea is you're adding value by processing into a concentrate, so it makes sense to put ore through the concentrator. But if we can take advantage of the high prices that we see today through several thousand tonnes of DSO, then of course we'll look at that too. In terms of this expressions of interest process, those responses have to be in by the end of the year. They're indicative and non-binding, so they won't be announceable. And then we'll go through a process of shortlisting. So there are different characteristics. It's not all just about the money. It's also about the partner. You want to be able to survive the cycles through the highs and the lows. So you want a credible counterparty who'll be there and honour the contract if it goes through the low period. And we want to see a floor price in the offtake. So that floor price will be designed to protect the operation's cash flow so that we can survive during the dips, but also take advantage of the high prices. In terms of our activities going forward, of course we continue to explore. We know we'll come up with an initial mine life of something between 6 and 7 years, and like the old gold developers in the 90s and 2000s, you go off a 6-year mine life and then you keep exploring to grow that. And a lot of those operations are still going today. So we'll take the same approach. Rather than just continue to explore to look for the 4th and 5th mineralised pegmatite, we'll start development, but we'll keep exploring. And we've got very prospective ground to do that, so we've got all the confidence that we'll find more as we go along. So expressions of interest and project partner, that'll play out between now and the end of March, probably into April in terms of something announceable. Scoping study will come out in January, and that'll give you, as investors, a real opportunity to look at the numbers, to understand the robustness of a Tier 2 smaller operation, which will be easier for us to execute. It'll be a couple of hundred people, not a couple of thousand people. And in WA, labour is a real critical factor at the moment. So something that's smaller for us to deal with should result in a quicker development pathway. We'll go into pre-feas, and pre-feas is all about optimising processing, because the key in the gold sector, grade is king. In the lithium sector, recovery is king. You must be able to process that ore and leave as little lithium as possible going out through to the tails. The idea is to complete a DFS by about March 24, make our decision to mine. We would have lined up our project partner and our funding requirements, and then move into our construction phase and ideally be in production in the second half of 2025. And if you follow any of the forecasts, that's pretty much when a gaping chasm opens up in terms of shortfall of lithium. So our timing is very opportune. In terms of the exploration upside, we've just completed a comprehensive step-back project scale review, and excitingly it's thrown up about 43 targets for our geologists to go out and map and rock chip and sample and work out where we should drill next. And in the 2 rounds of field visits that they've already conducted, visiting about a dozen of these 43 targets, they've come up with some pretty interesting pegmatites that we weren't aware of. So we're pretty confident that, we're heartened by the fact that this study is already throwing up some tangible things for us to look at. And unfortunately, 2 gold projects, really good gold projects, they take a back seat. They're in the shadow of the lithium project. They're in a fantastic location for gold projects. Look, the reality will be that we'll continue to work on these in the background and add value to them, and at some point in time we'll monetise those by divesting them, which will of course help us fund our lithium project. We're also sitting on, and there's that's evidence of some good gold hits worth following up, but we also sit on half a dozen joint venture interests where we're a minority free carried partner. And these are projects that were in the company's portfolio that have been effectively handballed to someone else to spend their risk money on and use their expertise to make a discovery. So we sit there with a free option effectively on these projects. And again, they sit there as an asset that we can monetise at the right point in time. So to summarise, we're funded for what we need to do. We've got options that are being exercised at the moment, so they're going to bring in another $1 to $2 million as we go forward. So we're funded for what we need to do. We've got a really experienced board and management. We're adding to the management team and the technical team as we go forward. Most importantly, we've got a lithium resource. It's in Australia, the #1 jurisdiction in terms of lithium supply, and that's not just because we've got the right lithium deposits, but it's also because we're a low-risk jurisdiction, and we're probably the best jurisdiction in the world to satisfy the ESG requirements of the downstream. We're moving forward with a scoping study. We're into detailed studies next year. We're looking for the right partner at the moment. We've got a lot of interest in big players, who are well-versed in lithium and have the financial capability to help us develop the project. And we're hoping to negotiate through to binding term sheets by about April. So that'll be a really key catalyst for us. And we're in a fantastic location in terms of infrastructure to develop our project. Thank you very much.